Krishna Is the one graciously Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Ljubljana Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Asadhara Sadhu Shri Shriman is the one graciously Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantya Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridasa Koti ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatana Raghunath Shri Jiv Gopala Das Raghunath Shri Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Prabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranithananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakan Radhakan Giri Govindam ki jai. Matharadam ki jai. Vrindavadam ki jai. Mayapurdam ki jai. Nittam ki jai. Jagannathpuridam ki jai. Ayodhya ki jai. ISKCON Ljubljana ki jai. Ki jai. Srimad Bhakti Devi ki jai, Srimad Tulsi Devi ki jai, Sri Panchatattva ki jai, Sri Gaurani ki jai, Korpramanande, Slava Zabranava, Slava Zabranava, Slava Zabranava, Slava Shri Guru, Shri Karanti.
Yasodananda Prahladananda Yasodananda Prahladananda Yamurakiha Yasodanandana Prahladananda Yasodanandana Prahladananda Yamunakiha Anachariya Yamunakiha Anachariya Jayara Madhava Kunjavihari Jayara Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Vishnupada Brahmangsa Bhagavata Asadhara Sadhushi Shinan His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Prahladananda Glories Slavas of Running Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Gaurangi. If anyone reminds me, I have some Tirupati. So, if you don't remind me, I might eat it up myself, so. Otherwise I'll distribute it. Do you know where Tirupati is? Do you know Tirupati? It's a sacred place in South India. It's the richest temple in the world. People they go there and they have to wait, stand in line for sometimes 2 days to see the deities. Has anyone ever been to Tirupati? How long did you wait for?
We waited 10 years and we waited 6 hours.
6 hours. And how long did you wait for? What's that? Oh, no, wait, okay. Om Agyanadvinandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksurmaitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Bhishtam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utavarakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagurjatam Sahagana Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Zvitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamani Hripriye Vanchakapa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyavacha Patidanam Vamanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra quotes song text number 6. Muchu Prema Baspagam Virahaut Kantya Kataraha. I Actually, there's no purport, so we're just going to read the translation. Due to anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhisthira arranged to offer sitting accommodations and a reception. Text 7. Tambuktavantam Vishwantam Asinam Sukha Asane Prashraya Vanato Raja Praha Tesham Shrinvatam Tambuktavantam Vishwantam Asinam Sukham Asane Prashraya Vanato Raja Prahatesham Shashrinvatam Tambhavaktam Vishwantam Asane Shuka Asane Prashraya Vantano Raja Prahatesham Shashrinvatam. Ladies. Tambuktavantam Vishwantam Asinam Sukhamasane Prashraya Vantito Rajan Prahatesham Shashrinvatam. Tam, him, Vidura, Bhuktavantam. After feeding him sumptuously, Vishwandam, and having taken rest, Asinam, being seated, Sukham, Asane, Prashraya Avananta, now very gentle and meek. Raja, King Yudhisthira, Praha, began to speak. Tesham cha, and by them, Shrinvatam, having heard. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After Vidura ate sumptuously and took sufficient rest, he was comfortably seated. Then the king began to speak to him, and all who were present there listened. Purport. King Yudhisthira was expert in reception also, even in the case of his family members. Vidura was well received by all the family members by exchange of embraces and obeisances. After that, bathing and arrangements for a sumptuous dinner were made, and then he was given sufficient rest. So he just didn't arrive and everyone got immediately surrounded him and asked him a million questions till he dropped. And they had to carry him to his bed and make sure he was still conscious. There's a normal methodology of receiving a person you want to get information from. If they're relaxed and comfortable, then they could probably pay more attention to what they're going to say. And if they're tired, they're hungry, they're agitated, and you ask them, you probably get a different type of reciprocation than if you actually take care of them properly. Just like when Krishna comes back from, for instance, the Kurukshetra war to Dwarka, it's not that the queens, they just all Krishna's coming back, now we got to start cooking again. No, they're quite excited, they send their children, it's all very enriched with transcendental sentiment and service. Therefore, if one gets money in the material world, then he wants to make nice arrangements. Very few people get a lot of money unless they get frustrated with it and buy a cabin in some remote place without any running water or a cooking facility. Most people with money, they try to make a very nice arrangement for everything, for their eating and sleeping, etc., because that's the nature of the soul. He wants comfort, he wants nice relationships, he wants to have a happy time, wherever he is, even in the material world. Because by nature of the spiritual world, everything is very blissful and happy. All the arrangements are made. And it's always becoming more blissful and more happy. And if it's not becoming more blissful and happy here, then we become depressed that my life is being wasted. After finishing his rest, he was offered a comfortable place to sit. Then the king began to talk about all happenings, both family and otherwise. That is the proper way to receive a beloved friend or even an enemy. How many times have we received enemies like that? Here comes our worst enemy. Let's give them a nice reception. Go out, have a kirtan, offer them nice prasadam, give them a place to rest, and then afterwards we can fight with them. According to Indian moral codes, even an enemy received at home should be so well received that he will not feel any fearful situation. An enemy is always afraid of his enemy, but this should not be so when he is received at home by his enemy. There's an example of that, where an enemy was received very nicely by his enemy in the Bhagavatam. Jarasandha. So what happened with Jarasandha?
They invite him to fight with Arjuna and Krishna.
First, what did they do? Arjuna, Bhima, and Krishna, how did they approach Jarasandha?
They came like to make some charity.
Because Jarasandha was very charitable. Well, how did Jarasandha know they weren't Brahmins?
Yeah, because they have some marks of both things.
On their shoulders, yeah. When you carry a bow, heavy bow, it makes an indentation on your shoulder. And what else about these three people were rather unusual?
They were very strong for Brahmins.
Yeah, Brahmanas at that time, the normal kshatriya was 6 meters high. Except for Krishna, he was a little short. He was only 5. So he was short for a kshatriya. And what about their voice? What gave their voice away?
They had deep voice.
Yeah, deep, commanding voices. Hi, I'm a Brahmin. So Jarasandha knew they were Kshatriyas, but why did he give them charity? Kshatriyas aren't supposed to get charity. Why did Jarasandha give them charity? What was his attitude? He thought they had already degraded themselves. Because for a Kshatriya to act as a Brahmin is actually a degradation. Therefore, he thought they were already they had degraded themselves, and therefore, you might as well give them some charity. They're in such poor shape. And what did Krishna say to Jarasandha? He said, actually, we're not Brahmins, we're Kshatriyas. We came here not to beg, but to have a duel. But they fought for how many days? Jarasandha and Bhima? 28 is the standard number of days. When Krishna fought against Jambavan, it was 28 days. It seems like there's a clock that takes in 28 days, the fight's over. So at night, when after they fought all day long trying to kill each other, at night, Jarasandha was a very nice host. Nice prasadam, nice place to rest, nice conversation. And the next day they went again tried to kill each other. Who can understand that? And what about the Kurukshetra war? And during the day they were massacring each other, and at night they'd have dinner, they'd have prasadam with each other. Inconceivable, right? Except for the last days, and then they went wild. They were fighting day and night. Usually when the sun set, then this fight would over, but they got so much excited about it. It's like distributing books. If you really get fired up, you don't want to stop. So they didn't want to stop fighting. And enemies always this means that a person when received at home should be treated as a relative. So what to speak of a family member like Vidura, who was a well-wisher for all the members of his family. Thus Yudhisthira Maharaj began to speak in the presence of all the other members. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatundeve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskadyade Satarane. The Bhagavatam is the ideal book for every occasion. In other words, in one sense, well, we'll find out the background that Vidura was transcendence, and therefore, wherever he went, he created that mood of transcendence. In other words, like Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys, when they take prasadam, it's not like it's a gloomy kind of atmosphere and, I'm hungry, whatever. But actually it's joyful, jolly atmosphere. They're all teasing each other. Madhamangala is patting his stomach, saying how hungry he is. They were joking and laughing, and prasadam is unbelievably nice, and there's unbelievable number of varieties. Says that Srimati Radharani has been cooking eternally for Krishna, and she never makes the same preparation twice. And if you eat a glavdamin in the spiritual world, whenever you remember it, that glavdamin, it's as good as tasting it, and it always tastes better the more you remember it. So who would want to go to the spiritual world? And not only that, but everyone there is tasty. In other words, if you're in the forest, and the flowers, their consciousness is that of pure bhakti. In other words, everything, the way they look, the way they smell, everything about them is pure bhakti. And therefore everything there is pleasurable and loving. Soft and delicate and loving, beautiful. So everything there. Where they live, the water, you breathe the air, ecstatic whenever you take a breath. It's pure bhakti, pure love. Everything there smells wonderful. Everything there sounds wonderful. Everything there looks wonderful. Everything there tastes wonderful. There's only pure enjoyment. And here, how many places you can go where everything smells great? If you can smell it at all. Does everything always look beautiful here or sound beautiful? No. That's why it's called material world. But whenever Vidura went, he was meditating on Krishna, and therefore he brought that atmosphere there. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wherever he went, he brought the spiritual world with him. As Advaita Acharya, when when Krishna asked Advaita, when he was on his pilgrimage to Vrindavan, and he was misdirected, and he went to Navadvip. He asked the cowboys, where is the river Ganges? Oh, sorry, where is the river Jamuna? And they pointed at a certain direction, and he went there, and found the river there, and then on a boat, on that river came Advaita Acharya. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Advaita Acharya, oh, you also came to Vrindavan. And Advaita Acharya's response was, wherever you are, my dear Lord, that is Vrindavan. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually brought Vrindavan with him, not just theoretically. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got disturbed with Nityananda because Nityananda had told the cowboys to misdirect Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to this river, calling it the Jamuna, and so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you tricked me, it's not the Jamuna, it's the Ganges. But at that particular place, actually the Ganges and the Jamuna flow simultaneously, so he wasn't being tricked actually. In any case, wherever our consciousness is, when we bring that consciousness, that's the atmosphere we create. That's why it's important, that whatever, especially when we're taking prasadam, it's important to have a nice atmosphere. Otherwise, if the atmosphere is not good, we won't be able to digest what we're eating as nicely as we could. Similarly, if everything is beautiful, because our eyes are actually organs of digestion. The reason why we can see things is because we digest light, and it forms into a pattern, and we digest it, and therefore we can see. So if we're seeing beautiful objects, then actually we digest it very easily, and it's actually nourishing when we see beautiful things. And if we see ugly things, or things in the mode of ignorance and passion, we actually get mental indigestion because of that. Similarly, the sound, isn't sound amazing? So someone's just saying, he's just vibrating. It's not the air, but the sound is coming from someone's lips, and it pervades everywhere, to a certain extent, in the whole room. Of course, we have a microphone to help that, but even without the microphone, sound just pervades everything. It's not the air that's pervading. Most of us are not so powerful that when we breathe out, everyone feels it. We breathe out and the pictures start waving. No, but the sound and ether goes everywhere. And the sound has a certain quality, either in ignorance, or in passion, or in goodness, or transcendental. Transcendental sound feeds our spiritual intelligence, and all the other sounds feed our material intelligence, either in ignorance or passion or goodness. So if we hear sounds all the time in ignorance, like the modern music is sounds in the mode of ignorance usually. Sounds like someone stepped on a cat's tail. The cat's screeching. But people have a taste for the mode of ignorance, and therefore when they hear that, it nourishes their taste for the mode of ignorance, because that's the sound that they're hankering for. That's why they listen to it. And in passion, it reminds them of sense gratification, and therefore it feeds their material desires for sense gratification, inspires them. And in goodness, then it's soothing, peaceful, calming, to a certain extent, enlightening, that in the absence of ignorance and passion, one actually feels much better. Although people conditioned by ignorance and passion, they become accustomed to it, and they feel disorientated. Like we know devotees, they lived in the city, and of course here is much more peaceful, but if you live in a big city in the West, and anywhere, especially India, all you hear is ambulances and people screaming and sound of construction. Vrindavan has been under construction for the last probably 100 years. It's only increased. So much sound, so much noise, and people get accustomed to it after some. They don't even hear it after some. And then if they go to the country where there's no noise, they can't sleep because there's no noise. So their mind becomes agitated. But actually, when the mind's peaceful, then one can actually hear transcendental sound more easily, and one can actually experience the transcendental flavor of the sound. That's why when we're chanting Hare Krišna, we should try to hear it. We should try to chant nicely, or else we won't want to listen to ourselves chanting either. If we're chanting Hare Krišna, I'm suffering, help me. We don't want to hear ourselves chanting. We get depressed listening to ourselves chanting Hare Krišna. Or we chant Hare Krišna, Hare Krišna, then our mind gets agitated. Because we're listening to ourselves, we're listening to our agitated mind. And it makes our mind even more agitated, listening to ourselves. Therefore it's recommended to hear from a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, because his sound is completely transcendental. And but because our minds are agitated, we can't appreciate it sometimes. Because he's chanting like a child calling for and therefore Krishna is actually present there. So it's not just that the sound is being produced, but how much Krishna is present in that sound depends upon the quality of our chanting it. At least for us. So if someone's chanting out of love and in devotion, then if we listen to it, then we'll learn how to chant out of love and devotion too. Otherwise, how can we do that? If we don't hear someone how they're chanting out of love and devotion, how are we going to be able to understand how to chant out of love and devotion? Therefore, Vidura came, and he was actually, as it says, he enlivened everyone there, because practically speaking, a great saint like Vidura, he brings the spiritual world with him, and therefore everything, and of course Yudhishthira Maharaj is also a pure devotee, so he knew how to create the proper atmosphere, so that a saint like Vidura could actually, it amplifies the message and the quality of the experience of hearing Vidura. Not only you don't have to just hear Vidura, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was in the Jharikanda forest, just by his presence, the deer, the elephants, the tigers, they're all dancing, and even chanting Hare Krišna, by the atmosphere that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu created. Therefore, when Nawab Hussain Shah, when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so he had advisors who were Hindus, and they said, Nawab Hussain Shah was not exactly a Brahminical personality. He was quite a demoniac materialist. But when he heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was surrounded by thousands of followers, and he wasn't paying them anything, then he realized that this must be God. Because only God is going to be surrounded by thousands of followers, and they don't get any material benefit from him whatsoever. He's a mendicant. He has nothing. So the atmosphere he's creating is such that it's attracting everyone like a magnet to his association, because they're getting tangible transcendental experience just by associating with him, like the animals in the forest of Jharikanda. As Prabhupada said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his chanting, he could get the animals, or by his presence, he can get the animals in the forest to chant and dance, and even the tigers and the lions were embracing each other. The tigers and the deer were embracing each other. I mean, that's potency. We can get tigers and deer to embrace each other. So Srila Prabhupada said, well, we're not so powerful as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but at least we should try to get in his words, the two-legged animals, the human beings in modern society, at least they should chant Hare Krishna. So that much potency we should try to obtain, so that when we chant Hare Krishna, we're experiencing so much happiness by doing it, that others are able to experience that happiness too, just by our association. So here is the ideal, and Bhagavatam is always the ideal, to show us what the ideal, at least external methodology of receiving someone here, for example, because that will create the, at least external environment where an internal environment is most likely to be cultivated. For instance, we have the temple room, we don't have television sets here, we don't invite people to come and watch movies, materialistic movies. Here we have pictures of Krishna, and we have the deities, and there's usually some incense and flowers to create an atmosphere that which would be much more likely for us to meditate on Krishna, because that's the goal, is to think about Krishna, and create the external atmosphere in such that it actually helps us create the internal atmosphere, because as our acharyas have told us, that we can actually experience Krishna through our minds. We experience everything through our minds and intelligence. But when our minds and intelligence are actually meditating on Krishna, then we can actually feel Krishna's presence, feel what it means to be conscious of Krishna with our spiritual senses. Otherwise, sometimes we're using more our material senses than we are our spiritual senses. Spiritual senses means that we have original senses that perceive everything. Everything is perceived through our spiritual senses, but when the spiritual senses are covered, and the covering is, we have this body, and the senses, mind, and intelligence are covered by the material contamination, and therefore we don't perceive things directly. We see things filtered through the material contamination, and therefore our experience is rather limited. Just like if you have colored glasses on, pink-colored glasses, then the whole world looks pink. Now the world is not pink, but because we're seeing it through the glasses, it appears to us to be pink. So since we're seeing things through our contaminated material and senses, therefore we're perceiving things accordingly in the material world. Of course, if ignorance is there, that will not help us purify our senses. If passion is there, nor will that help us purify our senses. Goodness may be more purifying, peaceful, but we have to have some food. Even if we're in goodness, then we have to have something that to feed our spiritual senses. Just being in goodness is not sufficient. We have to have some transcendental nourishment. But spiritual life is such that if people hear Hare Krishna from real devotees, and if they take prasadam offered to Krishna, offered by real devotees, then something will come through in their spiritual senses, if they're at all receptive, if they're not too dull. If they're appreciative and they're receptive, then they'll experience something higher taste, something other beyond the material world, and that will attract them to get some more taste. Therefore, adal sadhu sangatya bhajana kriya. So the devotees should be nice to people. They should be dressed nicely. They should act nicely. They should present things nicely. And of course, we're presenting prasadam and the holy name and Prabhupada's books. So these things are sufficient. If they get a little taste from association of devotees, they may take advantage of these things and make spiritual advancement. But the devotees we don't give them nice prasadam, we don't chant nicely, we don't value the books and give it to them nicely, then it's much more unlikely they're going to appreciate this transcendental gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his representatives, and take advantage of it, and purify their senses so they can actually understand and experience what is the unlimited value of the gifts that are being offered to us and to others. Just like the holy Dham, if we go there, so some people it appears material. As a matter of fact, the residents there sometimes are acting in materialistic ways. But that doesn't mean the holy Dham is material. It's completely transcendental for those who are actually transcendental. Because Krishna still has his pastimes going on there, and every place in Vrindavan has some significance in relation to Krishna. Therefore, even from the external point of view, it's a great opportunity to remember Krishna. But from the spiritual point of view, if one is able to purify one's senses, one can directly perceive Krishna's pastimes there. And if we become distracted by the external environment of Vrindavan, then, or Jagannath Puri, or other such sacred places like Mayapur, then we may not be able to perceive the actual transcendental nature of where we are, because our minds are absorbed in materialistic consciousness rather than spiritual consciousness. So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribo.
If anyone is hungry, let them come and eat. Otherwise, we're going to get the same for time. We have to travel around 4,000.
With a stop in Dubai.
Stop in Iran.
Klein eigenlijk, hoe is het?